720,000 jobs have just disappeared from the labor market in less than 18 months. At the same time, the most stable pillars of the economy were also simultaneously pushed into four-wheeled metal boxes to live. RVs once symbolized freedom, the journey to watch the sunrise at the Grand Canyon or the sunset on the California coast. But by 2025, they became the last refuge for hundreds of thousands of full-time, fully taxed Americans who could no longer afford rent. From Phoenix to Denver, from Vegas to Portland, supermarket parking lots, churches, and vacant lots are transforming into hidden refugee camps, where thousands of workers are forced to temporarily live their lives on four wheels. In today's video, we'll explore the hidden RV crisis spreading across America. What is the reason why hundreds of thousands of full-time, previously stable workers are now forced to live on four wheels? And how are these once bustling communities gradually turning into ghost towns? Let's find the answer in the next 25 minutes. California is always considered the economic heart of the United States. From the gold rush era of 1848 to the modern technological age, this state has been the epicenter of opportunity, innovation, and the most powerful social mobility. With approximately 18 million workers, representing nearly 11% of the national workforce, any economic fluctuations spread quickly and strongly from California across the country. For many years, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and San Jose have served as the largest centers for attracting talent in the United States. People are coming here because they believe the job market here can absorb any skill and any profession. However, that very position also makes California the most clearly affected when the labor market enters a period of decline. In the first 10 months of 2025 alone, California accounted for 14% of the total 1.1 million layoffs announced nationwide, approximately 158,700 people, the second largest cut in the country. This is the second largest nationwide cut. If the unlucky number back then was 13, this year it seems that the number 14 is the one that truly frightens Californians. More notably, the technology sector. Major companies like Google, Meta, Apple, Tesla, and Salesforce have collectively laid off approximately 73,000 employees between 2023 and 2025. This is a high-income labor group that was once considered safe on the economic ladder. When jobs are lost, that security disappears very quickly. Many engineers and office workers who previously earned $150,000 and $200,000 per year are now only receiving unemployment benefits of about $1,900 per month. Meanwhile, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco remains at $3,400 per month. The gap between reduced income and unchanged housing costs created an unexpected slide, leaving many families unable to maintain their housing within just a few weeks. When the rental market requires proof of stable income, but the labor market is shrinking significantly, tens of thousands of people are forced to seek alternative solutions. RVs became the only option because they don't require a lease and can be moved continuously as needed. However, this solution also doesn't ease the burden on workers who have already lost their income. The cost of renting a spot in an RV park in California currently ranges from $1,700 to $2,300 per month, excluding electricity, propane, insurance, and repair costs. Official RV parks are overcrowded with waiting lists of up to 6 to 8 months, forcing many people to park their RVs in parking lots, along roadsides, or in old industrial areas. Currently, California has over 150,000 people living in RVs, the highest number in the United States. Importantly, this group is not only made up of low-income earners, but increasingly includes people who previously worked in the technology, media, and finance industries, those who were once considered representatives of the solid middle class. Losing a job not only cuts off income, but also affects access to housing, pushing workers into a cycle where RVs become the last resort to avoid complete homelessness. California is therefore not only the state with the most people living in RVs, but also the place that most clearly shows how a job shock can quickly push a once prosperous community into a state of despair overnight. If you think California is the worst, buckle up, because what awaits in Florida is even more brutal. In the period 2019-2022, Florida became one of the fastest growing destinations in the United States. Miami is experiencing a particular boom with thousands of new jobs in technology, finance, and services. People from all over are moving there with the belief that Florida is becoming the next Austin, a place that still maintains a moderate cost of living, but with more career opportunities than ever before. It was this very expectation that caused the labor force in major cities to grow faster than the ability to build housing. And the price to pay is that this growth rate quickly created a downside. Rental prices in South Florida have skyrocketed, with a single RV parking spot in an RV park costing $1,800 per month, while apartment rents are far beyond the affordability of most workers. Florida has become the clearest example of the rule. When the population grows faster than the rate of home construction, rental prices not only increase, but become completely detached from the average income of the middle class. That boom only lasted for a short time before the labor market reversed. Tech offices in Miami are shrinking, Meta is closing its base, and Spotify is reducing its workforce by 60%. Thousands of employees from well-paid groups, engineers, office workers, middle managers, suddenly lost their jobs. And in Florida, losing your job almost immediately means losing your home. This is the intersection of two systemic pressures: rapidly rising house prices and a declining job market. When income disappears, but housing costs remain the same, a large group of workers falls off the housing ladder in just a few weeks. This is the typical video crisis model: large layoffs plus unaffordable rent. A previously stable class slips out of the housing market. When apartments are out of reach and income requirements can't be met, many people are forced to find a last resort, buying used RVs or cheap trailers, anything that can serve as temporary shelter. For them, RVing isn't a travel choice or a free lifestyle, but a way to completely avoid homelessness. But even this option is not sustainable. The cost of living in an RV remains high due to campsite fees, summer air conditioning, travel gas, maintenance, and repairs. Many people ended up having to live temporarily in empty lots or along the roadside when RV parks were overcrowded. Natural disasters in Florida are often cited by politicians as the main cause of crises. But if you look deeper, you can see that storms only play a secondary role. The major storms in 2024 did not create an RV crisis, but only accelerated the process of driving people out of their homes. As the unemployed and the homeless compete for space in an already crowded RV market, the housing market's decline accelerates and deepens. What's happening in Florida is not a temporary crisis. It is the result of two opposing trends. Rental prices and the cost of living increased steadily over time, while income and job market stability declined. When these two forces meet, the middle class, the group that kept Florida growing rapidly between 2019 and 2022, is caught in the middle and lacks the strength to return to the housing market. Florida thus became the clearest demonstration of the core of the theme. When house prices rise beyond the trajectory of income and the labor market creates large layoffs, the decline of those who were once stable does not happen slowly, but very quickly. And RVs, and with all their limitations, became the last safety net before many families fell into complete homelessness. After the pandemic, the tourism industry recovered quickly, and Nevada became a barometer for that fleeting prosperity. Casinos and hotels are reopening, and the number of guests is increasing significantly. But rental prices, which rose sharply during the supply shortage, did not return to their previous levels. With the income from hourly jobs, from waiting tables to cleaning rooms and dealing cards, many people can no longer afford to rent an apartment near the center of Las Vegas. This difference makes RV a mandatory choice for thousands of workers, especially those in the middle-aged and older groups who have been in the service industry for many years. Living in an RV in Nevada isn't the flexible or mobile choice advertised. It's a direct consequence of the growing gap between average income and the cost of living in a city that's developing too quickly. Rising gas prices are making it even more expensive to commute from remote areas, forcing workers to balance distance, driving time, and gas money, factors they didn't have to consider before. The desert area around Las Vegas thus became an involuntary residence. A series of RVs are concentrated in Pahrump and remote suburbs, where parking is cheaper but infrastructure is limited. The lack of shade, stable electricity, and clean water significantly increases the cost of cooling during the summer using air conditioning or generators. This creates a hidden cost spiral. The further people have to live from the center to save money, the more they spend to keep their RVs minimally habitable. This is one of the typical models of the post-pandemic housing crisis. Costs decrease on the surface, but the total cost of living increases. Although Las Vegas maintains its bustling and stable exterior, the city relies on a cheap labor force more than ever. However, this labor group is pushed to the margins, where they have to live so far from the center that it takes hours to travel. The separation between the casinos and entertainment districts downtown and the RV towns dozens of miles away shows that Nevada's problem isn't just housing, but the distribution of economic benefits. The city benefits greatly from tourism, but most workers cannot afford to live near their workplaces. From a broader perspective, Nevada tells a story that goes beyond poverty. It exposes the coexistence of two worlds, a glittering, rapidly growing Las Vegas and another Las Vegas, quiet, weary, where thousands live in RVs to maintain the jobs that feed the city itself. These two worlds rarely meet, but their separation reflects the deepening rifts in the socio-economic structure. Nevada thus became a clear reminder that superficial prosperity sometimes only masks problems for a short time. As the cost of living continues to rise and wages fail to keep pace, RV homelessness won't stop in this desert region. It could spread to service-dependent communities across the United States. Whenever anyone wants to leave California, they often immediately think of Texas. Lower taxes, a strong atmosphere of innovation, and seemingly more affordable living costs. But within a few years, the rate of population growth and the flow of technological capital far outstripped the rate of housing construction. The city of Austin has become the epicenter of this imbalance. The labor force poured in too quickly, while the number of new housing units increased very slowly, causing the market to become overloaded in a short period of time. As the tech industry grows, so does the rent in Austin. But as layoffs spread, the seemingly safe salaries in this industry were no longer enough to keep workers in the city. The combination of reduced income and unchanged or continued rent increases led to the decline of many previously stable families. In Austin, a layoff isn't just losing a job. For many, it's losing their home soon after. In a context where apartments are becoming less accessible, RVs are quickly becoming an alternative housing solution for the unemployed. However, the Austin city government enforces strict regulations limiting long-term RV parking within city limits. This forces people to constantly move to avoid fines or having their vehicles towed, creating a state of prolonged instability where they are unable to settle down or effectively find new jobs. The satellite towns around Austin, like Pflugerville, Round Rock, and San Marcos, have become hubs for people living in RVs. But living far from the center brings other costs: gas money, travel time, and vehicle wear and tear. This is a clear indication of the lack of synchronization between economic growth and housing infrastructure. The city is growing in terms of jobs and businesses, but the infrastructure supporting housing is insufficient to absorb the new population size. The housing crisis in Texas reveals a larger reality. Increased GDP does not automatically translate into increased livability. When development happens too quickly without investment in housing infrastructure, the very people who create growth, engineers, tech workers, service workers, are pushed out of the city limits where they work. RV homelessness in Texas is therefore not just an economic phenomenon, but a consequence of the imbalance between expectations and reality. A state that wants to become a new technology hub, but whose infrastructure is not strong enough to retain its workforce when the labor market fluctuates. The RV parks around Austin are a testament to this. A lopsided growth chart where just a slowdown in hiring is enough to push many families out of the city's orbit. Texas thus became an important lesson for many other rapidly developing areas of the United States. Short-term economic growth cannot be relied upon to compensate for deficiencies in housing infrastructure. If this disparity continues, RV homelessness will not only be an issue for Austin, but could become a common pattern for new tech cities nationwide. Sometimes a crisis isn't caused by a single factor, but by the combination of two elements that occur almost simultaneously. In western North Carolina, Hurricane Helen disrupted housing infrastructure in Asheville, sweeping away over 40% of rental housing stock in a single night. In the East, the financial center of Charlotte is once again affected by the wave of job cuts in the banking sector. Over 12,000 jobs were eliminated, leading to a decline in income for thousands of families who were previously stable. As the financial sector cuts back sharply, a segment of the middle class is unable to maintain rental payments that have been steadily increasing for years. And in Asheville, where the storm destroyed most of the older homes, the housing market became so scarce that the remaining properties immediately increased in price beyond reach. The combination of unemployment and homelessness creates a gap that the traditional housing system cannot fill. In those circumstances, RVs became the only option for many families. It's not because they desire a nomadic lifestyle, but because there are no other markets that will accept them. New homes weren't built in time. Old homes disappeared or became too expensive, making RVs a temporary but indefinitely extended housing option. In many areas devastated by the storm, spontaneous RV communities have sprung up, lacking stable electricity, clean water, and almost no public services to support them. These makeshift RV parks reflect a major gap. The disaster recovery system is not equipped to handle large-scale damage. Support programs have limited budgets, slow reconstruction speeds, and virtually no medium-term solutions to bring people back into the housing market. When economic activity is disrupted by unemployment and housing infrastructure is disrupted by storms, people find themselves struggling in a trough of two compounding crises. Given what's happening, North Carolina is a clear example of how two types of risks, environmental and economic, can combine and put even middle-class communities at risk of falling off a stable path in a short amount of time. This is no longer a story of individual families, but a warning sign about the resilience of many regions across the country in the face of future double shocks. Washington, particularly Seattle and the East Side, reveals a stark reality. Tech growth over nearly a decade has driven population increases far faster than housing construction capabilities. Large companies are constantly expanding, attracting highly skilled workers from across the United States, but the supply of affordable housing is not increasing proportionally. When the market is booming, the high salaries in the tech industry help workers offset the rising cost of housing. But when layoffs came, this balance collapsed almost immediately. When layoffs happen, those who were once considered the safest become the most vulnerable. They lost income, while the requirement to provide financial proof to rent a home in Seattle remained unchanged. Rent prices haven't decreased, and landlords continue to require an income 3 times the amount of the rent, making it impossible for those who were previously high earners but are now unemployed to find new housing. This pushed them into a precarious situation in a short amount of time. The shift away from the traditional housing market led to the formation of RV communities around large campuses in Redmond, Bellevue, and Seattle. This is an easily recognizable paradox. Those who once worked in modern glass buildings now have to set up RVs by the side of the road, creating an invisible ring around the largest technology hub in the Pacific Northwest. These RVs are not a manifestation of personal choice, but a direct consequence of housing costs and income requirements no longer aligning with labor market fluctuations. The shortage of affordable housing makes Washington a prime example of a one-sided growth model. The economy and population are growing rapidly, but residential infrastructure is stagnant. When the labor market changes abruptly, the housing system is unable to absorb the shock, causing workers to fall off a stable trajectory in just a few weeks. And it's this combination of stagnant home prices, high income requirements, and large-scale layoffs that has made Washington one of the places where RV homelessness has surged most dramatically among a previously stable workforce. This is a reminder that even the most powerful technology hubs in the United States are not immune to the consequences of developing faster than the ability to build essential living infrastructure. Idaho represents a different kind of crisis compared to the other states in this story. In California or Washington, layoffs are the trigger. In Florida or North Carolina, natural disasters exacerbate the problem. But in Idaho, the main cause is population shifts and the growing gap between local incomes and soaring housing prices. In a few years, people from expensive states like California and Washington poured in faster than housing could be built, driving real estate prices in Idaho up by nearly double. With significantly lower average incomes compared to coastal states, many indigenous people are being priced out of the housing market on the very land their families have lived on for generations. This change creates a dual phenomenon. A group of long-time Idaho residents can no longer afford to buy or rent homes in the city due to price competition with higher-income individuals from elsewhere. The second group is those who moved in during the remote work period. When companies scale back or end remote work policies, many of their employees lose their jobs and are also unable to return to their home states because they have sold their assets and left the housing markets where they originated. Idaho thus became a stuck place for two classes: the indigenous people who were pushed out and the economic immigrants who had no way back. In that context, RVs are becoming an increasingly popular temporary housing option. However, Idaho differs from states with warm climates. RV parks are scarce, infrastructure is limited, and prolonged cold weather significantly increases the cost of repairing, insulating, and maintaining living conditions in RVs. A lack of stable electricity, support services, and legal parking makes RV life in Idaho much more difficult than in milder states. People in RVs are forced to fend for themselves, and the level of insecurity is higher than in places with developed RV markets. From a peaceful, low-population state considered a safe place to build a life, Idaho is showing the opposite. When even the least volatile communities are falling into a housing crisis due to price pressure, the question is not just for Idaho, but for the entire nation. If states once considered the final refuge of the middle class are also losing their ability to retain residents, where else can be considered a truly safe haven in the face of the growing gap between housing prices and income? Looking back at what's happening in California, Florida, Nevada, Texas, North Carolina, Washington, and Idaho, we see a common picture. No state is in crisis for a single reason. Each place has its own story, but they all revolve around the same two forces: job loss and housing costs. And when those two forces collide, even the seemingly most stable communities become fragile. This is not just a story for the poor. It's the story of the middle class, of those who once believed they were in a stable position, of those who contributed to the development of the very states where they are now being pushed to the margins. A generation that built and witnessed America's rise now has to question whether the values they believed in still hold true in the current context. If hundreds of thousands of stable workers, who once represented the sustainability of the American middle class, now have to live in RVs to survive, what does that say about the current housing structure, labor market, and resilience of the economy? If the story in this video resonates with your experience or perspective, please leave a comment below. Please like, share, and subscribe to help more people see the reality happening around us. Your interest and voice can help clarify the issues the community faces every day. This video is not intended to assign blame to any individual, organization, or government. The content is based on public data, reports cited in the original articles, and information verified at the time of creation. The purpose of the video is to provide an analytical, social, and informative perspective, aiming to promote understanding and positive discussion about issues affecting the lives of people across the United States.